go.
The
Oh,
survivors of the quake.
Yeah, yeah. And it was really cute because she did it in voices, in a high voice for a lady and, kind of a deeper voice.
Yeah, she's a character.
It
She seems
really
she
is.
seems very like mild, and
okay, here we go.
she's
Welcome
a
to
little
the
imp.
show, where your host, nationally recognized certified appraiser Elizabeth Stewart, Santa Barbara's treasure sleuth, will help you put a value on the treasures in your own home. Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven?
Here we go.
So let's find out
Three,
how
two,
valuable is
one.
it?
You're live.
Hello, 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 Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. And it came to my attention a really cool lecture series that's going to be happening at the Architectural Foundation at the gallery space there. And I searched down the author who is going to be speaking, and I have with us Sherry Ray to talk to us just for 20 minutes or so about the upcoming lecture series. She sent me the cover of her book, and this was your first book, wasn't it? The String of Pearls?
Actually, well, I've written several books on other topics, but this was my second book about Pearl. I many, many years ago, I wrote a little small version, which was just sort of like just kind of a compilation of like the important things that she did. And I always felt a little embarrassed because she deserves so much more. So actually,
Right.
during COVID, that became my project. Was like, no, I figured that somebody who was a real biographer would tackle this, but nobody did. So I guess I was just like, well, in honor of Pearl, I guess it's up to me. So that's why I did it.
Okay, so what we're talking about is our own Santa Barbara's own Pearl Chase. And Sherry wrote this book called A String of Pearls, Pearl Chase of Santa Barbara. And so she will be speaking about Pearl Chase in two volumes, I should say, that's going to cover different topics in Pearl's biography. But we're June the 5th is the first lecture at the Architectural Foundation at 6 p.m. And then June the 12th at 6 p.m. And then also Sherry Ray is going to be speaking to the Pearl Chase Society on June 27th. And I didn't know this, but before we went on the air, Sherry said there's over 200 members in the Pearl Chase Society, which is kind of amazing,
Mhm.
and going strong.
Yeah.
A little bit about Sherry. She's a civic activist, award-winning newspaper columnist. She's the author of more than 300 articles and commentaries about Santa Barbara, longtime editor of The Capital, which is the newsletter for the Pearl Chase Society. She lives in our area, Santa Barbara, Bungalow Haven, and she's been a preservationist, architectural preservationist in that area, regarding the historic buildings and the trees.
Oh,
So
yes, the trees. We saved
yeah,
the trees.
yeah, I remember that. It's fantastic
They
because
were
that beautiful sort of canopy, the street would be nothing without that.
Well, there were three of
Um,
us. We worked very, very hard on that for 2 years, and we did it partially in Pearl's name because she loved those trees. But we just felt like that's a part of Santa Barbara history that needs to be maintained. So,
That's fantastic. She she's a director of the Dyslexia Project, and what was so interesting was I looked at that online. Is pretty impressive. And she's been named a local hero by the Santa Barbara Independent for fearless efforts on behalf of students with dyslexia, and awarded a resolution from the California State Assembly for dyslexia work. She's a magazine editor. She's had management positions at Runner's World, Surfer, California Scenic, Bicycle Sports, and she supports and writes about what she calls worthy causes. We had a really cool conversation yesterday about Pearl, and I wanted to ask Sherry Ray a little bit about Pearl. But before we get into that, Sherry, what fascinates you about the woman?
I was very interested in learning how it was that she was able to accomplish so much in such a wide array of interest areas. because in some ways, you can tell from my biography, I've done a lot of different things that seemingly are unrelated. But I wanted to understand, how did she do it, especially at a time when women didn't have the kind of freedoms that they have now. But she actually was able to turn tragedy into a triumph when her mother died unexpectedly in 1913. And she and her father and her brother, Harold, who's also a very important person in Santa Barbara, they created sort of an economic unit where Pearl was supported by her father and her brother. And the deal was, well, she would take care of the dad and um, represent the family in the community. And that's what they did. So people often say, oh, Pearl, she never took a penny. Well, she didn't have to. So I found that very fascinating and I wanted to really explore it more.
So you're saying that now this is interesting. You're saying that the father, um, was he elderly? I mean, did he need her attendance or what was the deal with the dad?
Yeah, he was in fairly fragile health. He had actually had a scholarship to go to MIT, which he had to refuse because his father went blind, and his father was an extremely successful mercantile person in Boston. And unfortunately, Pearl's father, Hezekiah, wasn't really able to run the business. He was only 19 when this happened. He did his very best, but it really wasn't successful. And so he actually ended up having nervous breakdowns. And I show, for example, letters that were correspondence between Pearl and her dad. And he was at a famous sanitarium in upstate New York that Frederick Douglass and Clara Barton had gone to. And we have letters that show he adored his children, but he couldn't be there with them. So he was always in fragile health, even when they moved to Santa Barbara. And they basically moved to Santa Barbara for him to regain his health and to regain their wealth. There wasn't really anything keeping them in Boston anymore. So they moved here in 1900.
Okay, so then the father in 1900 said, "Okay, I'm not really the fit representation of our family, but Pearl is," but he picked Pearl over the son, which in those days is odd, huh?
They really worked as a unit, and actually, not to give Hezekiah, to give him his due. At different times when his health was going well, he did very well, and he was one of the first realtors in Santa Barbara, and he founded the Board of Realty, and he promoted Santa Barbara and its natural beauty and its wonderful weather, and he was very, very active in that. And of course, Harold, the son, helped his father a great deal, but he was a couple years younger than Pearl. And Pearl, her assistance to the family was like whenever she would travel, she would bring home phone books, and then they would use the phone books and send out mail, to get new clients. So they had a pretty good deal going on. And housing was always a big issue to her, small homes for middle class families. Yeah.
How interesting. So yeah, that's the tie-in, I guess, with her social concern. And I
Mhm.
think she had a working degree in social work. Is that correct?
Well, her major at UC Berkeley, she graduated in 1909. She graduated with a degree in history. And then she came back to Santa Barbara, and she was pretty much a big fish in a very small pond. And she wasn't married and didn't have any particular prospects at that point and really didn't know what to do. And there's a passage that she wrote in her diary, and she said, "I'm feeling despondent, laid on my bed and played my ukulele all day." So she didn't really know what to do, so she went to the normal school, which at the time was a place that trained teachers. And she ended up becoming a home economics teacher at Santa Barbara High School. And that was something she never had intended for herself. But the wonderful thing was when she was at the normal school, she got to do a lot of social work, and that's what she loved doing. And then when she quit being a teacher, she went back to the social work at the recreation center, which we all know is over on Cabrillo, that beautiful brick building. She helped raise the money for that, and that's where she worked.
I had no idea that was her brainchild over there. Yeah, I always see people going in for dance classes and such like. Yeah, over there, yep. So she made a conscious decision, you write, not to marry.
Yeah.
What was
She
what
had to
was
take care of her
behind that?
dad. First of all, her commitment was to her father, and her mother was tragically killed by him in the garage. He ran her over, and he was guilt-ridden, and it was terrible. And this was in 1913. So Pearl vowed her statement was, "I promised him that I'd take care of him the rest of his life." And I would imagine in the state of health that he had, she didn't expect that he was going to live until 1951. So she took care of him until she was 63 years old. So all of her adult life, she cared for her dad, and she and her brother often switched off, and they would so Pearl could travel, that was their big commitment, was to take care of dad.
That's amazing. You know, it's that's the way it goes, Sherry. It's like I always call it the Aunt Sylvia phenomena. I had young Sylvia and old Sylvia, two aunts. They were mother and daughter.
Mhm.
And the daughter, it was the same thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to take care of my mom forever. And forever was probably going to be, 5, 10 years because old Aunt Sylvia always was saying, I need this medicine. I can't live another day, da 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 da. So she outlived young Aunt Sylvia.
Oh,
So
well,
that's what I'm talking about. It's yeah, Ezekiah's chase,
yes,
that's a situation.
yes,
Yeah. So
yeah.
Harold was an important person. In what way, Harold, her brother?
Well, he was very good at business and at real estate, and he actually was the developer of Hope Ranch. So he helped really make the business successful. And if you go downtown at 1012 State Street and you see the Chase monogram on the building, that was their office at 1012. It's the Chase building. That's where the Chase restaurant has been. I think they're closed
Yeah.
because yeah, but that's where they work. They originally started in 1903. They were down farther on State Street and then moved up to 1012. So yeah, Harold was a very good businessman. He loved the outdoors. Both he and Pearl loved the outdoors, and he had a ranch that he kept in Northern California, and he actually identified a particular tree that is now named for him. So they were both extraordinary people, and sadly, not enough is known about Harold. And I always say somebody needs to write a book about him. So, yeah.
Well, there you go. That's your next book. Just, very quickly, you talked to me yesterday on the phone about a couple that was very important to Santa Barbara, and you actually have spoken about this couple, and I had no idea who they were when you mentioned them yesterday. So this is Bernard and Irene Hoffman, and it turns out they moved here from Stockbridge, Massachusetts in 1921, and they were instrumental in rebuilding after the earthquake. And that's a big deal for us coming up. And by the way, dear listener, if you've got free time next Friday and you want to tune in and listen, well, Sherry has agreed to continue our conversation along with Betsy Green, and Betsy is, of course, our favorite local historian. And we're going to talk a little bit about the quake, and it's the anniversary of the quake, by the way.
Mhm.
So we want to talk a little bit about the importance of the earthquake, and I thought it'd be interesting to have Betsy talk about what she knows about the actual day itself and the survivors of the day, and then I'm thinking of Sherry Ray to talk to us about the rebuilding of Santa Barbara. So Bernard Hoffman, quickly tell me who he was, Sherry.
Well, he was an engineer who was very successful. His father had been very involved in historic preservation efforts in Stockbridge, and that is a very beautiful town that has been cared for, and its historic appeal has been appreciated since like 1853. And he already had this knowledge about historic preservation. He was quite taken with the Spanish look of the buildings that were already here. And he and Irene purchased Casa de la Guerra, which at the time was in danger of falling apart. So they bought that and restored it. Then they built El Paseo, the beautiful street in Spain. And if you go there, you'll see that there are some tile murals that are dedicated to them. That's pretty much the only memorials that we have in the town, which is really a shame because they were so instrumental. actually before the earthquake. They helped in 1924. There was a huge boom, and so many buildings were built in the Spanish style. And they were extremely wealthy. I hadn't realized how very wealthy they were. But Irene's father started the stockyards in Chicago. And so
Ah,
when he passed away, she was the sole heir. And the estate was $8 million in 1919, which I've read translates to about $200 million today. So they had unlimited money and they were very generous and very kind people. They were so thrilled that their daughter could be cared for at the Potter Clinic, which became the Sansom Clinic, because at that point, diabetes was pretty much a death warrant for children. So she lived, sadly, she died when she was about 21 from another cause, but she had a wonderful life here in Santa Barbara.
so they came to pretty much it for health reason,
Yeah.
for their daughter, and that they bought the De La Guerra Plaza, and they started to sort of shore that up, and they built they what did you say they built La Paseo?
El
El Paseo.
Paseo, you know, the street in Spain, that
Oh,
beautiful.
right. Okay. Yes. Okay.
And that
And did
was, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, did they actually? So was Bernard interested in the real estate part of Santa Barbara or the preservation part, or what was his focus?
He just thought that Santa Barbara ought to be built up in the Spanish style. And at that point, in 1924, people had been through the war, they had been through the pandemic. They were ready to have some fun, you know, with the Roaring Twenties. And we had so many wealthy people here in Santa Barbara, and they all worked together to create a cultural climate that they had left behind when they, you know, because a lot of them just summered here, so or wintered here. It just depended on which they ended up doing. But they would come here and they kind of wanted the same thing. So they started the Community Arts Association with music, drama, plans and planting. And they wanted to create something really special of Santa Barbara with a Spanish look.
Right. And they're so interesting because I guess at just personal level, Sherry, so the Libero hired me to open a storeroom in the basement that hadn't been open in 50, 60 years, and to see what was in there. They knew that there was apocrypha, there was an old piano and some old weaponry.
Oh,
They kind of knew that there was something there. Somebody that had been at the Libero in I guess about 60, 70 years ago, had made a note of what was in that storeroom. And so we opened that storeroom, and there was this old, you know what a coffin grand is? It's a grand piano that's square. It's like
oh.
I should say rectangular. And the strings run instead of up and down, they run side to side.
Mhm.
So there was the carcass of that without its legs in there. Um, and I became very interested in that. It had a kind of a ghostly kind of a role because it was directly underneath the libero stage, and that meant that the strings picked up with resonant frequency whatever music was being played on the stage above it.
Right.
And that's if you've got a piano in the house, it quietly hums along to any kind of tone. It has to do with the physics of sound waves. But at any rate, I became super interested in that piano, and it turns out that when the Community Arts Association was established and they had their first performance at the Libero, they mounted a play that had to do with a concert pianist,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and that was in the 20s as well. It was and what you say, it's really interesting to hear this kind of reinforced. You
Mhm.
know the era so much better, but this idea that there was going to be a cultural mecca here, and some of the people that were mounting shows and music, even at the Libero and at the Potter and some of the other places that people were performing, they would search out the best of the best. I mean, they'd go to New York and bring people back to teach, to perform. I mean, it was pretty amazing. And as you say, it was they wanted this to be a cultural mecca.
Yes, yes. And Pearl and Bernard teamed. He was the head of the CAA, the Community Arts Association, and she was his quote unquote secretary. And they raised the money for the Libero, and it opened up in 1924. And it was the beggar on horseback that they.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
The beggar on horseback. That was exactly, and that has to do with music because the protagonist is a young concert pianist.
Yeah.
So we kind of trace that back, and Brett Hodges was the board president there, and I kind of did the research on, that play itself, and if it was interesting, Sherry, because I actually found the expert on coffin grands that were the only made for about 10 years. And I spoke to him and I said, this is the kind of character in the play that I'm researching. I'm trying to find out uh, if he was the type of character, type of person, if he was a real person, if he was the type of musician that would have had a concert grand in his apartment. And his apartment in that play, Sherry, is not high style at all. I mean, he's kind of down on his luck, and he's making sure that he's going to be a starving musician the rest of his life. So the stage directions say though that apartment is not beautifully furnished. It's got one kind of beaten up chair and some raggle-taggle draperies, etc. I described that to my expert, and he said, "Yeah, by that time, concert grands were cheap because nobody wanted they wanted the uprights. That was the new thing." So yes, if he was a starving artist at the time, he would have been happy to have a concert grand. So we kind of pieced that together, and there it was.
It's so great to be able to look back in history and find out, and you feel like a detective to put all these little bits and pieces together. And so
Right.
when I was writing the book about Pearl, I went out to the UCSB Special Collections. I can't tell you how many days I was there at $8 a day for parking. And I literally went through, I committed to this. I committed to going through all of her correspondence that she had there from her mother's, back in like 1886, all the way up to when she passed away in 1979. So it was remarkable to learn some of the stories from her own hand. Then, of course, the thing is, when you're piecing these sort of things together, you don't know what she didn't put, what she kept out. That's the only thing.
Right.
We don't.
Right. Well, I want to give another shout out. And Richard, do we have our other guests in the waiting room? Okay. I want to give another shout out. Sherry Reyes, you can hear an expert on Pearl Chase, an expert on Santa Barbara history as well. She'll be speaking at the Architectural Foundation Thursday, June 5th at 6 p.m. and likewise June 12th at 6 p.m. and at the Pearl Chase Society, June 27th. And she's also going to join us next Friday to do a little commemorative show about the anniversary of the 1924 earthquake with Betsy Green next Friday. So actually, don't turn that down, dear listener. When we get back from the break, we're bringing in some wonderful people. Paula Farrington is with us. She's the president of the Santa Barbara Museum of Art Women's Board. And we are having Jerry Petticourt and Caitlin Tapp, two designers, and we are going to talk about the wonderful show that's happening or will be happening. It's called The Art of the Table. I went to that before COVID. They stopped it during COVID, but it's back on and it's phenomenal what these designers come up with. Absolutely phenomenal. So we get back from the break, we're going to talk to the president of the board and Jerry and Caitlin about the event, The Art of the Table. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute. Thanks,
And
Sherry.
you are clear.
Yeah, Richard, bring them in for me.
I will. They're on their way. Sherry, we'll see you next week.
Okay. Thank you so much. You just
And stay well.
I hope, I'm sure I'll be much better by then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
We've got Jerry, Paula, and Caitlin.
Hello.
Excellent.
And
Excellent. Hey, guys, thank you for coming. Yeah, and thank you for being a little early in the waiting room. Yeah, as you can hear, my previous guest has laryngitis, so it was like, okay, we are radio after all. And Jerry, are you there on your phone? We don't see
Yes,
you, but
I'm
there,
here.
you're there. Okay, okay. Do you have a video capability?
Yeah, no, not where I am right now.
Okay, okay, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. So the video is only for our own use anyway, so
Okay.
not to worry. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. All right. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? The earthquake?
No, 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 the art of the table.
Oh, the art of the. I understand that in 2 weeks you're going to be doing the art of the deal.
Art of the table.
No,
One
wouldn't
week.
touch that one.
Sorry. All right. The art of the deal. One sentence. Kill your opponent. That solves everything. All right. Let's see. What are we doing here?
We're going to talk about art of the table.
Who are we and how did we get here?
My name is Jerry Petticourt. I'm the co-owner of SR Hogan Company,
Oh,
Stewart,
wow. Cool.
in Montecito.
Wonderful. We'll stand by. Elizabeth,
Okay.
you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1. You are live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. And, a number of years ago, I attended the Art of the Table at the Santa Barbara Museum of Art, and I was blown away. And just a little introduction why I think this is so fantastic is that, I'm an appraiser of objects, and I guess you could call it material culture. And I've noticed over the last, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, the market has been appreciating fine china, good sterling, nice crystal, and dining rooms starting to creep back into our lives. Was a time when you couldn't give away a nice set of Spode or Copeland or even Wedgwood. And now we're starting to see a little bit of an upswing. And I've been, over the years, such a interested scholar of the way people set a table. It has really evolved through the years. And just a little shout out that I have been collecting a type of sterling called Francis the First over the years, which was um, celebrating the fact that Francis the First in the 17th century decided that there was going to be a table service that included the house's cutlery. Instead, previous to that, you brought your own with you. There was no house cutlery. It was brought with you, and you had a little carrying case. And so, yeah, this is just an interesting topic to talk about. Paula Farrington is here. She is here after a 33-year career at UCLA. She was in corporate financial services. She was director of payroll services, strategic planning. She's originally from Whittier, but she graduated from the University of Colorado. They moved to New York after graduation, her husband Greg, and they built and lived in an artist studio. She's always learned about art and culture throughout the world, and she is now president of our Santa Barbara Women's Board. And the sponsor, by the way, the Women's Board is the sponsor of two major exhibitions, Vian Sora, Outer Worlds, which is opening soon, and the Impressionist Revolution from Monet to Matisse from the Dallas Museum of Art. I had the great pleasure of talking with Mr. Gleason about from the museum about that particular exhibition. And thank you to the Women's Board and Paula for bringing us those two shows. I have with us also Jerry Petticourt, co-owner of Hogan Company. I didn't realize it had been around this long, Jerry. You were founded in 1986.
Yes, Scott Hoag had opened the flower shop in '86, and I was his apprentice. And then Mr. Hoag retired about 18 years ago, and Christy Meelan and myself took on the reins, and we've been running it ever since.
I had happened to look, I wanted to see your creations, and I went and looked at your website, and it's just beautiful. And I've seen over the years your work, and it's phenomenal. It's going to be super interesting to see what you come up with for the art of the table. I have Caitlin Tapp. She is Habitat Home and Garden, third generation family business. Here again, I had no idea it was three generations. Um, and so this is what I'm reading in her bio. She likes to make her customers feel like part of that family. Um, and they actually, I looked at the website last night. And I've been to the shop, but the interesting thing is everything they have is unique. It's stuff that
Mhm.
objects you don't find anywhere else. They also like a lot of handmade objects. And I like the fact that the furniture is, I gotta say, Caitlin, so my son is in his mid-30s, and I try very hard to save, furniture pieces that I think are really notable. And you can probably guess where this is going. He is not interested in any of them, but I'm actually seeing that people are now starting at auction. They're realizing that some of these beautiful old pieces are beautifully made, and they're actually it's a little resurgence happening with classic furniture, which I'm really
Absolutely.
interested to see. But you guys do classic, but you do classic, but with a modern touch.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what really sets Habitat apart is that we really specialize in those generational skills. All of our pieces are, built to last, like you said. It's really hard to find, beautifully handcrafted pieces that fit a really balanced and well-rounded set of styles, but are still so simple and can match with really any person's aesthetic. And, your son being younger and wanting those beautiful traditional pieces, it's hard to find in the market nowadays. And I think that's what Habitat really specializes in, is those beautiful, timeless solid wood pieces that are built to last and are those generational pieces that you're going to have for the next 30 years.
So, Paula, I want you to think about a question for each of the designers here. If you would think of a question for Jerry and think of a question for Caitlin, during my question to both of them, and let me start with Jerry. Jerry, what is in the back of your mind? What will your creation, without spilling too many beans, tell me a little bit about what you're thinking. How are you going to create your work of art?
Well, I always, look at the venue or the room or go off the client's request. And obviously, we had the artwork to inspire us. And I have selected that Asian flowering branch, and I'm gonna do it with a kind of more of an homage to the art and with the coloring and so forth like that. And it's very simple, but elegant.
So Jerry, did you go to the orchid show this year?
I go every year. I've been
Yeah.
going since I was a little kid.
Yeah, so I went 2 days in a row. I thought it was so interesting. And they're kind of stealing a little thing from the museum, and that they did a sort of an artwork themed
Right. Uh-huh. They have
little
a different theme
niche.
every year. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. So and that was really interesting for me to see, because I mean, some of it was, I thought, amazingly creative and artistic. And
Yes.
but it
The
so
museum has done this event quite a few times. I think this is the third time for Art of the Table, but they did something very similar to this about 10 years ago, where it was every year, where each artist was selected to go off of design off a painting and do a floral design that corresponds with that. And it was truly a lovely event, and we were proud to be a participant in it every year.
how do you, Jerry, this is a dumb question, but I come from a Midwestern family. I grew up in a sort of a farm area community, and the one thing that surprised me so much, so my mom would not use flowers at the table very often at all because it was expensive. Um, and if she did, she tended to, I remember we had this china that had like little pink flowers. She tended to match the pink, and it was so matchy matchy. And I thought, how this is the way floral design has to be. It has to
Oh,
match something.
not necessarily.
I
Um,
know, I know, but
I
where
I
I'm
have
going.
I have lots of wonderful clients who inspire me, and when we're working on a social event or a wedding or a corporate event, we usually kind of pass back and forth design boards and mood boards, and that works really well for me. I'm from an artist background. My mother was a professional artist, and her mother was a artist, and they were from the Midwest too. And so it was always around me. And my mother was a very prolific artist, so my house is full of her art, and her friends' art, and my art.
So then I went to graduate school in England, and I actually met and married a young engineer, British engineer, uh, years and years ago, and his mom was an avid, so many English women, and she was very wealthy. She had an amazing garden, and for the first time in my life, I saw a centerpiece that didn't match the china. This is
Well,
fantastic.
as a florist, I kind of look at all aspects, and color, linen, setting always plays into the mood of the florals and the settings and so forth like that. And I do all sorts of different designs and looks, and this one's a little different from me, and you'll all see it in a couple next week. And I love color. I mean, I'm all about color. My house is colorful. My shop is colorful. But this is going to be a little different.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
So, and I want to acknowledge Richard's giving us a sign. We got to go to quick break, and I want to come back and ask Caitlin what her focus is and what her piece is, and then I also want to save some room for Paula to ask the artists, the designers on the air with us today, some questions, because she comes from a background of knowing what she's talking about in regards to the show itself. So I'd like to hear from Paula when we get back as well. So don't turn that down. Back in a minute. I'm excited to see what Caitlin's going to come up with. Be back in a minute.
All right,
Richard.
you are clear.
So no, it's a true story. It's a true story. It's my mother-in-law was such an amazing artist as regards to, she always had flowers on her table, and always flowers from her garden. And it was just such an eye-opener that this was, elegant. It was just
Yeah.
elegant. Yeah.
My mother had an amazing rose garden, and so there was always flowers. And they were, and my father was a very avid gardener, so there was always flora and fauna everywhere. And my mother painted mostly natural life, flowers and watercolors and acrylic and oil and china and so forth. And I had
my best girlfriend in high school, Debbie was her name, and her mom was very, very high up in the world of event planning. She did everybody's bar mitzvahs, bas mitzvahs, weddings. She had a flower shop in Chicago. And I remember, so when she'd have big events, she'd ask her daughter and myself to help out. And you're from the Midwest, so we had this incredible wedding that we did with wisteria. I can remember decking all of the main hall at the Palmer House. Do you remember the Palmer House? Yep.
my mother was from uh, upstate Illinois, and so Chicago was a couple hours away. And they had moved. My parents moved out here in the early '50s, and I've been in Santa Barbara ever since. And so I was always attracted to the flora and fauna and the tempered weather and the gardens in Santa Barbara and Montecito and so forth like that. I feel very fortunate. I've seen quite a bit and participated in a lot of weddings and bar mitzvahs, and it's hard work. You're schlepping.
Yeah. You know, it's funny that the reason
Okay,
that
folks, stand by. We
Okay.
are coming back in
Okay.
3, 2, 1. You are live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. I'm speaking with Caitlin Tapp. I'm speaking also with Jerry Petticore, and I'm speaking with the director, the head of the Santa Barbara Women's Board, Paula Farrington. And why we're speaking about this, I should be more clear. This is the Santa Barbara Museum of Art Women's Board is the popular event, Art of the Table. It's happening June 7th, so very shortly now. It's at the museum's galleries. If you were here in 2021, you saw the last of this iteration, and they're bringing it back again. They've asked a number of designers, I think there's 10 or 12 or maybe more, that are nationally recognized designers, and each has chosen a work and is going to be inspired with their creation by the work of art. The evening begins at 5 p.m. That's the preview for sponsors. That's the first look at the table designs and the opportunity to meet the designers at 6 p.m. The ticketed guests join the sponsors and designers for wine and hors d'oeuvres, a chance to view the displays, traditional, elegant dining tables, imaginative, et cetera, et cetera. The tickets are $450 per person. Sponsorship and underwriting opportunities benefit the museum itself. So, Caitlin, tell me about your inspiration.
Yeah, I'd love to. So it was a very interesting piece that we got paired with, and I'm really, really excited to just celebrate that piece of work. Beautiful, and I don't want to give away too much because I'm excited for everybody to see it in person, but really just a lot of beautiful organic shapes and colors to the piece, and I was really inspired by that. A lot of greenery, a couple just really nice pops of color too. So I really tried to focus on that and, without overshadowing the piece, letting it kind of speak for itself. And I'm just excited to, also represent what we do best, which is those timeless, beautiful, traditional and unique pieces that I think are really going to complement the piece nicely. There's a lot of really beautiful organic shapes that I'm going to play with in our vignette that we're going to do. And I'm just really excited for everyone to see it. And we're just excited to, contribute to the community and get to be a part of the fundraiser to support the Women's Board. I'm really excited.
So your design aesthetic is more about the built environment but are you using floral touches as well? Yeah.
Yeah, good question. We'll definitely have some floral aspects, a lot of greenery involved because the piece is definitely that more organic vibe, if you will. We are a furniture company, so we are going to represent those beautiful and traditional pieces. But we do also have, beautiful pottery and, tableware. So we're going to pull in some of those elements and make a really beautiful tablescape.
I think that one of the things that is so remarkable about the human experience is the sitting together at a table, or used to be a board, and sharing a meal and all the traditions that have evolved around that. And I'm going to open the floor up now to Paula. I want Paula, because she comes from a background of understanding what the event is all about. Paula, you've got the opportunity to ask questions of Jerry and Caitlin for me.
Sure. So we've asked 11 local designers to create tablescapes inspired from works from the museum's permanent collection. And I'm really excited because there's pieces from the Asian art collection, 19th century European painting, photography, and new media, as well as antiquities. So it's a really exciting mix from the museum's collection. So tablescape comes from the mix of landscape and table, and it's about arranging things on a table like a work of art. And so I guess my question is, I'm curious to see what kind of materials you're going to be bringing to your table.
Good question. I'll jump in. Habitat has a lot of really beautiful organic textures. As I said, we have an incredible, tableware, kitchenware line that we carry. And kind of to touch on what Elizabeth said, really representing the tradition of sitting down, enjoying a meal, and enjoying the beautiful presentation that's in front of you. I think that's really important. And so I love playing with mixed medias. I think it's really exciting for the participants. So Habitat's going to bring a lot of really unique. I don't want to give away too much, so I'm trying not to be
Right. I want to be
super
surprised.
vague.
I want to be
I want it to
surprised as
be a
well.
surprise.
Yeah.
But a lot of greenery. The piece that we were partnered with really has a lovely I don't want to say too much, but greenery
Yeah,
vibes.
senior
So
piece. It's
yes,
very contemporary.
yes,
Yeah.
very, very
Fun,
unique.
fun.
So
Yeah.
really trying to partner or to pair that really nicely together.
Yeah. And the idea of community and sharing really is what the Women's Board is about as well. So looking forward to it.
Very excited.
What's interesting is to me in listening to what Caitlin is saying is what she's talking about is being inspired from this. I take it to be sort of an abstract piece with a lot of movement and color in it. Caitlin, has this changed the way you set your table at home?
Oh, that's a good question. I think definitely, it's interesting to draw on different elements around you in a home. And I feel like a lot of the times the default when setting a table or, even designing a space is to go by, kind of industry standard by the general trends. But I think it's really important to note what you're inspired by. And that was kind of what I really tried to hone in on with doing this tablescape is the art piece that we're paired with is definitely outside of my comfort zone in terms of what I am comfortable with and what I like to look at. So it was really a test to, get outside the box and draw on different elements from the space that we're going to be designing. And I think the average person, again, it's easy to fall into kind of those default settings of doing tablescapes, but really being inspired by what's around you and not being afraid to be different and to make it a piece that you're going to be proud of and that is really going to be an attractive and enjoyable piece for everybody.
And go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, I had a question for Jerry. The piece he selected is very meditative. Is that the mood that you're going with?
Yes, except a little extravagant on the table. It's very, it's a very simplistic Asian piece, and that's I've really taken that piece of art and ran with it, and you'll see it when next week. I've been working on it for a little bit, and I do this for a living, and so I love a challenge, and we're looking forward to making it happen. I've had custom linens made. I've made a couple custom pieces, prop pieces, and so forth. And I just love a little challenge, and I feel very fortunate in Santa Barbara where I'm lit to given a theme and I can run with it, and that's what I love about the art of the table and working with the museum.
Jerry, I have a question for you. On your website, it's saying that, you're not afraid when you do an event, you're not afraid of maybe vintage linens and even some, vintage tableware. And, I'm an appraiser. I have so many people that ask me all the time, what do I do with these linens? And some of them are absolutely beautiful and generational. Can we call you?
Yes, I work with probably about 15 different linen companies. Usually I'm in the event business, and I'm looking for multiples and so forth.
So we have to go to quick goodbyes here, and thank you. And I'm looking forward to the Art of the Table, June 7th. Thank you, guys. Thanks, Paula.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
Thank you.
See you all next week.
Thank you.
And you are all clear.
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, guys. It was nice meeting you. Thank you,
Okay.
guys.
Yes.
We'll
Hey,
see you
Paula,
Friday.
will it be open to the public after the event, the main event?
Yes, Sunday, it's open to the public.
Okay.
Okay.